My friends, after all this time, after all this deception, after all this foolishness, I must say, it's time for us to claim what's rightfully ours again. Hello everyone, how's it going? iamxeracon here, and I am back once again. The past 24 hours has been quite interesting. Initially I was, just like pretty much following the news regarding the Bethesda live stream, which was interesting to say the least, that we waited over 12 hours, I think maybe it was almost a day, just to get a teaser trailer for Fallout 76 at E3. And then of course there was the Pokemon live stream also, which detailed the Pokemon Quest, which I don't think anyone really cared about. Pokemon Let's Go, which was confirmed real, and it is sort of like Pokemon Go but on the Switch. But then also the fact that that's not even the real Pokemon game, but next year we're getting the main series entry Pokemon games next year, so that was interesting. No word on Elder Scrolls, just Fallout. And also Crackdown 3 might be cancelled, and Perfect Dark, as I just found out, might have been leaked by Walmart. Yet again, Walmart leaks things. These game companies really need to consider if they want to tell Walmart about these games yet or not. I don't know. Because they're doing a horrible job with keeping things disclosed. But on to the topic at hand. So this is something that I've been considering, and it's something that I feel that at first I wasn't sure if this could possibly be a thing, or rather I was in denial about it, but then I realized the fact that gamers are ruining gaming. And what I mean by that is they have allowed the gaming community, they've allowed the game companies to just completely ruin gaming as it was, or how it should be. And you might be thinking, well, no, I mean, if anything, it's the companies, or maybe even casuals. And while I would love to blame casuals for ruining gaming, a lot of stuff that goes on, or has gone on, is a result of actual gamers. Let's start out with, I guess you could say, DLC, microtransactions, stuff like that. So, going back, I don't even remember how far this would be, maybe 2000s, I don't even know when this game came out, but you have GTA 4. When that came out, there were 2, I think, expansion packs that came out for it, and that would be, like your first paid content that wasn't a part of the game that you download and stuff. That was fine, because that was something that was a completely new experience. It was an add-on for the game, and so, it was fine. But then, even with that door being opened, however, it allowed other people to do the same thing and then just pervert it completely. Because from there we saw the rise of DLC that should have been in the game at launch, but that was locked away behind a paywall, and then we also see the rise of microtransactions. Now, you see, with a lot of stuff, there's like, we had stuff before where, like, certain unlockables and stuff, where you had to either complete certain objectives in order to unlock things like skins and costumes and other stuff like that, or or you put in cheat codes. In fact, I have a book of cheat codes for games, and like I said, you either put in cheat codes to unlock certain things, or you had to play and beat certain things to get these unlockables. Now, it's at the point where in order if you want to get something, you have to buy it, which is foolishness, and is completely ridiculous. And gamers had a chance to say something about that, but they didn't. And so they allowed this practice to go on and continue to the point where we have all of this stuff going on that we have right now, with like stuff like Capcom with fighting games, and how there are characters that really could have been there at launch, but they just like pushed them back. You have pre-order characters like Injustice, where like you have to pre-order to get Darkseid, or you can get pre-order to get Darkseid. Otherwise, you'll just have to buy him. Stuff like that. Characters that should be in there but aren't. And it's not like that. Even with characters like these, we didn't know they were. It's like something where they planned on later down the road, and they were going to release them. We knew about these characters early, and they were just like, yeah, you know about these characters. They could be there at launch. However, we want to milk you for it. So unless you pre-order, you're gonna have to pay for them, and that's just ridiculous. So gamers ruined that, and what else there's another part of that too. And speaking of pre-orders, the fact that you pre-order and buy a game, and it's going to be, chances are it's going to be buggy, and it's going to have problems with it. And I'm not saying that you can't spend your money how you can't. What I'm saying is I can't stop you from spending your money how you want to spend it. However, you're contributing to a lot of these factors if you do it. For example, if you pre-order an Assassin's Creed game, it's going to be buggy. There are going to be glitches and stuff. There's going to be problems with it. If you pre-order, if you pre-order an Ubisoft game, if you pre-order some Activision games, if you pre-order EA games, for crying out loud, you're going to have your bugs and glitches and stuff in there. So I don't know why people pre-order these games and stuff. Now, I only believe you should pre-order games under two scenarios. One, and this is the biggest one, is it's a collector's edition or special edition or deluxe edition or something like that. So you're actually getting additional stuff for it and whatnot. Or two, the game is a limited physical edition. Like Lost Sphere. That game was sort of limited physical edition at the Square Enix website. So if you wanted to get that game, you would have to pre-order that. I think they might have actually recently restocked physical copies, but other than that, though, once if you didn't pre-order it, you weren't getting that game unless you're going to buy it from a scalper on Amazon or eBay or something like that. So those are the only two conditions where you should, or well, not should, but where I could see you actually buying it. Now, actually, I'm wrong. There's a third option, and that's if you know that you're getting a good quality game. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you pre-order a game, well, what I'm saying is when you pre-order a game and you know that it's going to be fine, that there's not anything wrong with, there's not going to be anything wrong about it. For example, 9 times out of 10, if you buy a game that's by Nintendo, you're not going to have any bugs or problems or any glitches or anything like that in there, because they're normally on top of that quality. Now, there have been exceptions like that for when Smash Bros. Wii U came out. In the earlier versions of it, I heard reports that if you played online, it could brick your Wii U. That was definitely very concerning, and of course I didn't play it online. I waited until some patches before I actually decided to play online with that. And then I can't remember any other games. I remember something, but I can't remember what it was. It was a Nintendo game that had some bugs or glitches or something like that. But other than that, though, if you buy a game from Nintendo, you know there aren't going to be any bugs or glitches. Um, some Sony games you can buy and there won't be any problems with it, like uh, like God of War. That's a game which you could buy and not have any problems with, any glitches or anything like that. Um, excuse me for a second. And then let's see what else. Uh, I think I don't know if maybe The Last of Us was that one was fine with no problems at all. Um, I don't think Nier Automata had any problems with that. I mean, granted that was a third party exclusive, but um, Spider-Man I don't think will have any problems, any bugs or anything glitches like that. Horizon Zero Dawn that didn't have any problems with it. So if you're getting games like those, like, but if you're like buying a game like that, or even and sadly, like, oh, what's it called? Uh, Sea of Thieves. That game is incomplete, and if you pre-ordered that game, you're feeling pretty foolish for doing that because it's a lackluster game that you're spending $60 on, and you're not getting anything for it, or you're paying a full price for a less than full price game. You're pretty much getting just getting like an early access, and that's ridiculous. But that does mean also the fact, another thing is the fact that game developers aren't, they're using gamers because they know they will they will play they will test the game for them, because there used to be people who would go in and test the game. They would play it to see if there are any bugs, glitches, or anything like that, if there are any problems, or anything that needed to be fixed. But now, they can release the games as early access or beta trials for people who pre-order the game, and they won't have to pay people to test it out because they will have the gamers who will test out the game and like give them feedback and stuff, whereas they won't have people who actually will be dedicated in trying to actually find bugs so that they can be corrected, whereas people will just play it just to say, oh wow, we get to try the game early and stuff and whatnot. And you're paying to try out a game which you don't even know what the end result's going to be like, whereas if you're like someone who's working so they can try to break the game if there's anything that can be broken, so that way the game can be fixed up. I'm not sure if I'm making any sense, but basically you're paying for a demo. Demos, you shouldn't have to pay for a demo. It's ridiculous. Also, that's something which I feel like we're losing a lot of is demos for games. Being able just to try out a game, see if it's any good. I feel like we're not getting enough of those anymore. And that's really a problem because we won't know if a game's good unless we're looking up online, or if we just happen to like maybe go by a friend's house, or if we go into like one of those kiosks at a GameStop or Walmart or something like that and try out the games for ourselves. We won't know unless we get the early access beta, which, like I said, is ridiculous. And then here's something that I feel is really just ridiculous, and that's the fact of graphics and power and stuff like that. Now, game companies, I will say, did start this back in the 90s and stuff, talking about with Sega's campaign about Sega does what Nintendo don't because it had the better processor. And then there was of course, the entirety of the bit wars, 8-bit, 16-bit. Then I think the Atari Jaguar was like the first 64-bit console. And then of course there was like the 32X, 32 bits and stuff like that. I mean, didn't know anything about that until like years later after all this stuff had happened, but that was the thing. So game companies started that, but gamers fed into that and were focused on the graphics, and that carried into um, modern gaming. So, you know, when we had the jump into when we had the jump into 64 bits, like with like say from Zelda and Super Mario into from 16-bit into 64-bit, um, there was a drop in frame rates. Games before were usually at a very stable 60 frames per second. Then you jump from that 60 frames for like Zelda into 24 frames per second, but you're getting 64 bits, and everyone's like losing their minds over how great the graphics look and stuff like that, and 64 bits. So, what my problem with that is that we had a jump in graphics, but at the cost of frames per second. No one complained about that. Fast forward years later, and gamers are saying that if a game is not 64 frames per second, it is unplayable. It hurts their eyes, and yet, they went and said that Ocarina of Time, which is to many considered one of the best games of all time, it's sub 30 frames per second, and yet they're saying that's a wonderful game, but now if a game is less than 60, it's unplayable, and I call out the hypocrisy in that, and how stupid that is. I mean, you're saying before it's like, oh, like as long as we get this big improvement and stuff, that's fine. But now, if a game isn't 60 frames per second, it's trash. So I don't get what you're trying to say. You're trying to, I guess, maybe have some sort of double standard, something like that. I don't know what they're thinking, but they're a part of the problem. These people do exist that did love Ocarina of Time, but then they say that if a game's not 60 frames per second or is like even below 30, it's completely unplayable and garbage. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. And then because of that, they're still like, oh, why can't we get this stuff? And here's the thing. We actually can get 1080p 60 frames per second for all games. However, the cost of that is going to be textures and like maybe the enemy AI, anti-aliasing, and like shadows and shadow effects and stuff like that. Draw distance, stuff like that is going to be impacted. But it is possible. People are saying the fact that consoles can't get 1080p 60 FPS. It is possible. However, what are you willing to sacrifice in order to get that? Do you really want 1080p 60 frames per second, or do you really want what looks pretty? Because, everyone's trying to say all these things like, oh, it's not possible. It is possible, but are you willing to sacrifice your graphics for the resolution in frames per second? And like I said, if you didn't complain about the lack of the drop in frames per second back then, you don't get to complain about it now. Like I don't necessarily care about if it is 30 or 60, as long as it's something that's consistent. But then I didn't complain about back then either. So I'm in the basis, as long as a game is running well and it looks decent, it's fine with me. I don't need it to be 1080p. I mean, I would like it to be at least 720p, maybe even like 900p. But I don't need like 1080, 1444, or 4K. And if it's a stable 30, that's great. That's my, that's what I would like. If it's 60, that's better, of course. But you know, I can't. I feel like you can't have it both ways. Where it's saying like, oh, these older titles that weren't 60 frames per second, those are great games. But now if a game's not 60 frames per second, it just shows that the quality has dropped. No, the quality of dropped back then, but you just didn't complain about it because I've had debates with people I know um, about stuff like saying like how you can't. I'm not buying a game because of how this company is running their business practice around consumers and stuff like that. Or like stuff or like because this game is filled with microtransactions, loot boxes. If this company is just like really cruddy, like EA, um, I'm not gonna support their games. And uh, like I said, because of my stance on certain games and like companies and stuff like that, I've butted heads with some people. Like one person, like I said, says that I'm going to be missing out on a lot of great games. I'm like, well, yeah, but there are a lot of other games that I'll be playing though, and as long as I'm getting games, it doesn't matter to me. Like, here's also what I said. I said I don't like the companies to insult my intelligence. If these companies think that they can try to swindle me and think I'm stupid, then I'm not buying their games or anything like that. I'm not supporting them. I'm not supporting this, and then like saying like, oh well, if you don't have to, you don't have to buy the microtransactions or DLC and stuff in order to play the game and enjoy it. That's true, but if you're buying the game, you're telling the companies that it's okay to have these practices. You're telling the company that even though you are cheating me out of content, um, I will still buy the main game. So because of that, I because of that, I will not buy the game because I do not want these companies to think that I am stupid enough to just buy the game and support them and put money in their pockets. I will spend my hard-earned money on something that doesn't insult me, something that gives me bang for my buck, something that is not buggy, something that has good quality content and something that I will enjoy. Um, that's all I want. That's all I want. But this person we are still we're we're friends. But that's something we're never gonna see eye to eye on. Although actually we are planning on doing something like a live stream though together. So maybe sometime this summer we'll have a live stream and a chat and we'll be like debating about that and maybe even discussing some other gaming topics and whatnot. But I really think that's it. I just really want to get off my chest about how gamers have allowed the industry just to fall down, and I partially feel like we're going to need another gaming crash to help things stabilize itself, because the way it is now is concerning, because I'm pretty much at the point where I could just like this could be like my last gen of like buying consoles, and then I'll just like buy games for the current gen and like everything that I have before, because I still have backlogs or lists of games that I went to buy for like GameCube, PS1, SNES, Game Boy Advance, stuff like that. So so that's fine. But if a game crash happened and it helped to make things the way they were again, that would be great. I doubt it though, because the game industry is the biggest industry out of like movies, uh, books, uh, music. It's bigger than all of those. It makes more money. Um, oh, that's another thing. The fact that it's become commercialized. The fact game that gamers sort of sold themselves. I mean, not that I have a problem with that. I mean, they've got to make money, but they sold themselves to endorse games that probably aren't going to be good or stuff like that. Like E3, it's a good time to showcase games, but it's such a commercial event that it's just filled with ads and stuff. You know, you've got a bunch of stupid things. Then, like, it's hard for um, people who sort of like get like early demos of games. You know, they can't say that a particular thing is bad with the game because they're sort of getting that demo and stuff. And then you've got YouTubers who are sort of sponsoring games um, because they're getting paid for it, of course. But at the same time, these games could potentially just end up being bad or something like that, or there's like a bunch of bugs or glitches or something like that. Sometimes, you know, the games could be good, but, you know, a lot of times they could be bad. And I really feel it's like just a big corporate, like, sellout in a way. And that, you know, some gamers are corporate slaves. But that's just me. I'm glad that the Game Awards from last year for the 2017 Game Awards, I'm glad that that wasn't a big corporate nightmare. You know, that there were like a lot of ads and stuff. It was pretty much just games. That's something, you know, that I just want to see games. You know, I just want to know what we're getting. I don't need a big spectacle. I don't need any like big performances or anything like that. Just show me the games, and then I'll be happy. But everyone, until next time, I am iamxeracon signing. Wait. I don't feel so good.